Have you ever wondered how Henry VIII's wives were related to him, or each other as a matter of fact? Well, in this video I will show you how they're all technically cousins. So if you're new to Mortal Faces, welcome! Here on my channel I untangle family trees and talk a little bit about them, so let's get started. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more trees, and let me know in the comments who you want to see next. Henry VIII's parents were cousins themselves. They were fourth cousins once removed. They shared the same ancestor, King Edward III of England, in the 1300s. From Edward III, he also produced three of Henry's wives. One son of his, John of Gaunt, his eldest daughter, married into the Portuguese royal family, and then she had a son who had a daughter who married into the Spanish Castilian royal family, who had a daughter who had Catherine of Aragon. Catherine was Henry's first wife and was never beheaded. Instead, since she could not produce a male heir, she was essentially shoved aside for Anne Boleyn. She was banished from court and lived in Kimbolton Castle the rest of her life, becoming very pious. But during her time beside the king, she became regent of England while he was in France and gave an emotional speech about courage and patriotism. In her younger years, she was also ambassador to England, appointed by her father, and wrote secret codes and negotiated with King Henry VII himself. As Queen of England for over 2 decades, she drew praise for her intelligence, generous charity, and was a model of Christian womanhood. Thomas Cromwell said, if not for her sex, she would have defied all the heroes of history. If she were in J.K. Rowling's world, she would be a Gryffindor. John of Gaunt's youngest child, Joan, gave birth to a boy, then a girl and a girl and a boy, Sir Thomas Parr. This line remained in England, unlike Catherine's line, who went to the Iberian Peninsula. Sir Thomas Parr had Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth and final wife. Catherine was well versed in medicine and marriage, as she was married twice already, and this experience would serve her well with Henry and his 3 very different children. She became the first woman to publish a work under her own name in England. One of her best-kept secrets was she knew how to handle Henry. When she became aware of Henry's darkening mood, she knew when to stop, not out of cowardice, but out of self-preservation. She was described as a woman of judgment, virtue, wisdom, and gentleness. Very smart, and if she were in J.K. Rowling's world, she would be a Ravenclaw. John of Gaunt's son produced Henry VII, and John's brother Edmund produced Elizabeth of York. But John's other brother Lionel produced a girl, a girl, a girl, a girl, a boy, girl, and then Jane Seymour, Henry's third and most favorite wife. Jane was not a great beauty, and she came from a rich but not very powerful family. She was lady-in-waiting to Catherine of Aragon, and then Anne Boleyn, and witnessed what not to do. The king apparently began to write letters to her while she was still married to Anne Boleyn. Jane did give birth to Henry's much-needed son, however she died 2 weeks after that, and by dying at the height of her success, Jane left the impression of perfection. According to the Tudor royal minister John Russell, she was highly praised for her gentle, peaceful nature, and in the world of J.K. Rowling, she would be a Hufflepuff. So that's Henry III's line, which produced 3 of Henry's wives and Henry himself. So Aragon, Parr, and Seymour would be the closest relation to Henry. If we go up to Edward I, Henry's 6th great-grandfather, he had 2 wives, Eleanor of Castile and Margaret of France. Eleanor produced Edward II and then Edward III, whose line we already examined, but Eleanor also bore a daughter, Margaret, Duchess of Brabant. Margaret had a son, who had a daughter, a daughter, a daughter, a son, a daughter, son, 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 Anne of Cleves. Anne of Cleves was wife number 4, but so much more. She was his wife for just over 6 months and survived. She grew up in Cleves, which was a small German duchy, so her line from Edward goes to Brabant, which is in the Netherlands, and then Flanders, Burgundy, which is in France, and then Cleves in the Holy Roman Empire. Henry chose her from a portrait, which was quite normal, and when she arrived, he disguised himself to surprise her. But she rejected this disguised Henry, and so he got a bad taste of her. Some say she ignored him and even pushed him away. Mind you, they did not speak the same language, so there could have been miscommunication happening and cultural differences. They got married, and after their wedding night, Henry was like, I liked her before not well, but now I like her much worse. The marriage was annulled For her cooperation, she was awarded the title of the king's sister, Richmond Palace and Hever Castle, which was Anne Boleyn's childhood home, £500 a year plus the revenue of her states. Now, she was single and rich. She chose to stay in England, of course, and when not a family guest at court, lived in relative peace and quiet. She is described as a lady of right commendable regard, courteous, gentle, a good housekeeper, and very bountiful to her servants. If she was in J.K. Rowling's world, she would be a Hufflepuff. Edward I's second wife was Margaret of France. Margaret produced Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. Margaret had a son, daughter, daughter, son, daughter, son, son, and then it split into Lord Edmund and then Catherine Howard, and Lord Edmund's sister, Elizabeth, who had Anne. So Catherine and Anne were first cousins. Anne Boleyn was Henry's second wife, and she is depicted as an ambitious woman who was blamed for destroying his first marriage. He wasn't having children with Catherine of Aragon. She did not want any annulment, and so he needed another route. He broke from the church to allow himself to divorce, then he married Anne. Anne was notoriously well educated, coming from a very ambitious family, and she gave him Elizabeth I, but then afterwards miscarriages. Henry was superstitious and questioned if all of this headache was worth it, and he began to look elsewhere for someone else to give him a son. Their relationship, built on passion and expectation, began to get more tempestuous. Anne, somewhat overly zealous, faltered her alliances, and superstitious Henry believed the words against her. So she was accused of adultery and treason and beheaded. In J.K. Rowling's world, Anne would be a Slytherin. Catherine Howard was just a teenager when she became his fifth queen and was also related to Jane Seymour, as both their grandmothers were sisters. Unfortunately, Catherine had a difficult childhood, as when she was 12, she was groomed by her music teacher Henry Mannix. By 14, she said she knew how to meddle with a man without conceiving a child. Henry was struck with passion over her and married her. However, she soon began to have affairs with one man, Francis Derham, and another, Thomas Culpeper. Love letters arose with Culpeper. Henry was actually shocked. He went into depression as he adored his young wife and had no notion of her infidelity. She was guilty of treason and was as young as 18 at the time of her death. She was a very green girl and was too carefree for her own good. Would that mean her actions would conduce herself to becoming a Slytherin? I mean, people did say she was a gentle girl. I guess she died too early before her personality matured to really tell. But that brings us to the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I have lots more on my channel. Subscribe for more trees. Each of your subscriptions does help this channel grow. It allows me to continue making more content for you. Let me know in the comments who you want to see next. I do make a list of all your suggestions, and I will see you in the next one.